There's something special about standing out in the landscape, completely absorbed in the light, the weather, the shapes around you. It's not always about chasing epic views. Sometimes it's the small details, the quiet moments, the subtle textures that pull you in. Lately, I've been spending more time focusing on that side of my photography, slowing down, noticing more, and trying to be more intentional with what I shoot. And I've really been enjoying using the Hasselblad X2D for this type of work. This week I'm in Pembrokeshire and I thought I'd bring you along for a bit of a slow-paced shoot, sharing a few thoughts on the camera, but also just spending some time appreciating the experience of being out here in nature. So welcome back, and we're down here at the lily ponds this morning to hopefully capture some landscape photos. Now, I haven't had the best of starts this morning. I was up at 3:30 to get out for sunrise. Sunrise was a bit of a dud, and then I arrived here at my location only to find that it was absolutely chucking it down with rain. Torrential rain for about an hour, which scuppered my chances of getting any early morning light. However, things are absolutely beautiful right now. And to top all that off, Luna decided not to wait until I got up this morning to do her business, which is obviously not what you want at 3:30 a.m. Anyway, they say things come in threes, don't they? So hopefully the rest of the day will be absolutely fantastic. Now, because we've had so much heavy rain, there's a lot of water sitting on the top of these lily pads, which I think looks absolutely fantastic. So I've got the X2D here this morning, and I'm just picking out details here, which is something I absolutely love doing. It just so relaxing, so calming, and just a great way to spend the morning. So I'm really looking for patterns, repeating patterns, or just nice compositions within these lily pads, trying to pick out a few details, just working on colours as well, trying to get something uniform, something that will work as a nice composition. Quite a few of these lily pads are a nice magenta colour, others are a light green, so there's a nice mixture, and obviously those two colours are quite complementary as well. So yeah, I'm loving this. Now, I have got my tripod with me today, but all of the shots I took back there, I was just shooting handheld because it gives me a bit more freedom. And one of the great things about the X2D is how good the IBIS is. It really is absolutely amazing. But the reason I have got my tripod with me today is I think maybe I might end up doing some focus stacking at some point. And it's always nice to have a tripod if you're doing that, especially when you're working, you know, quite close in. Sometimes it can be quite tricky stitching images together, shooting handheld. What a beautiful morning it's turning out to be. Which is absolutely great after the bad start. So this area here, I think, catches more sunlight than where we were before, and the pads are a lot larger, and there's also some flowers that are just coming into bloom as well. So I'm going to work in this area for a little while, see if I can make a few compositions before the light perhaps gets too harsh, because it's turning into a blue sky day, which definitely wasn't forecast. But anyway, I'm going to work this scene here, see if we can make a few more shots before it's all over. You know, one of the things I really like about this camera is the colours. They look absolutely amazing straight out of the camera. Now, they call this the Hasselblad Natural Colour Solution. And I think natural is the key word here, because I find myself having to do very little work to these files in terms of colours in post-production, aside from maybe boosting the vibrance and the saturation a bit. But that's just to suit my personal taste. Now, I'm definitely not fully up to speed on all the technical magic behind it, but what I do know is that this camera captures over 281 trillion colours thanks to its 16-bit colour depth, which is pretty cool. So, I found a really nice little composition just down here. Now, you might be able to see I've got the camera strap on because the thought of dropping this thing over the side absolutely terrifies me. So yeah, safety first with this one. But we've got this section of lily pads here which just splay out nicely from the edge of this bridge. But I think what it is that drew me to the composition is the dappled soft light that's interacting with the pads themselves. It's coming through these trees here and it's just helping to soften that otherwise really harsh light. So yeah, I really like this one. There's a couple of flowers as well which are just starting to burst. So yeah, quite a nice one, I think. Colours were absolutely amazing, and the water drops I thought were absolutely fantastic as well. You know, I think the best conditions are often after heavy rain, especially for landscape photography anyway. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about the Hasselblad Files and what they're like to work with for a minute or so. So I'm using Lightroom here and my laptop is a MacBook Pro which is running the M2 chip. So it's a few years old now, but it's still a very capable machine, I would say. So as I scroll through the images here, you might notice the pixel dimensions of the photos changing here in the top left corner. And that's because every one of these shots has been cropped in some way. Either because I wanted to change the crop ratio or because I needed more reach than the 55mm XCD lens could provide me with. Actually, some of these are cropped quite heavily, but because of the resolution of the lens and that 100 megapixel sensor, the images still look really detailed and also very rich in colour. Like with any camera, there are of course a few compromises, and I'm not really going to get into the price here. I think we all know this is a pretty expensive piece of equipment, but the one thing worth mentioning is just how much information these files hold, because they are big. From this morning's shoot, most of the raw files came in around about 215 megabytes each, which is about 5 times larger than the files from my APS-C setup that I usually use for my landscape photography. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind, I think. Now for me personally, it's not really a big issue because the way I work, I'm not taking a huge number of shots. You can see here that I took 150 photos this morning. But the majority of those shots are me refining my composition or experimenting, you know, basically trying to find order amongst all of those thousands of lily pads. Now, out of those 150, only about 15 or so I would class as keepers. The rest I've just bin off. So the actual data from this morning's session would only be about 3.5 gigabytes. But I can see for others this might be an issue. Let me know in the comments how many photos you take during a session and how many you bin off from that. I'd love to know. Now, the second compromise with working with such large files is that you may see some slowdown when editing your photos. Like when scrolling through the film strip or zooming in. Quite often you might experience some buffering as it loads the data. I tend to switch between the library module and the develop module when flicking through my film strip because it's so much faster. I use the shortcut keys E and D to quickly toggle between library and the develop module, which eliminates the problem entirely. When I want to scroll through the film strip, I'd literally switch to my library module and I can skim through them without any problem at all. Everything is super quick. So sometimes for my workflow, I need to focus stack my images to get a large enough depth of field. You know, sometimes I want to get sharpness right from the front, right to the very back. So I'm really interested to see how long it takes Photoshop to handle this task. So I've got 4 shots here that you can see in the film strip, and I'm going to load these up into Photoshop and stack them to see how long it takes. I'm going to show you in real time just exactly what you might be looking at to stack 4 very high resolution images. So let's highlight the 4 shots, right click, open as layers in Photoshop. So let's see how this works out. I'm just going to let this run in real time so you can see it for yourselves. Now I'm going to add a layer mask to each layer, and now we're ready to manually blend the layers together with a brush. Now, I'm not going to do this part because once you're at this stage, it's running absolutely fine. There's no lagging. You can paint away as much as you like and it all works super quick. So yeah, the actual process of blending these is basically down to how much work you have to do in terms of painting out the relevant layer. So yeah, I won't bore you with that, but hopefully you can see how much work or how much time it takes on the front end to get you to a stage where you're actually ready to blend those images. Obviously, once they're finished, you can then just save it back into your Lightroom library. Now, I will say as well, heavy cloning work is a little bit laggy in Lightroom. I would advise, especially if you've got a setup similar to mine, is to take the file into Photoshop where you can do cloning work, retouching work, and it's super fast without any compromises whatsoever. So yeah, any heavy tasks like that, Photoshop definitely handles the files way better than Lightroom does. You know, I've really been enjoying using this camera over the last few months, and a big thanks goes out to Hasselblad for giving me the opportunity to collaborate with them. But also a big thanks to you for watching this little mini series. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, you might like the one that's at the top here. And why not check out my ebook on composition if you're interested in how I compose my landscape photos. Anyway, I do hope to see you all again next week. Take care.